I have to talk loud enough. I'm gonna finish it right here. Okay, so they went twice. Dude didn't make it back. That's when Mansa Musa became the next Mansa after him. And it was another guy named Ibn Khaldun. He's some type of historian that lived around that time. Well, around the time of Mansa Musa, around when he made his pilgrimage. Because that's when the guy, Ibn Khaldun, was told of this story. Once, there's another dude too that talked about the pilgrimage of Mansa Musa. And his name is Mukti Kati. Anyway, that's when he became the next Mansa. By that time, they had a whole bunch of gold. Oh yeah, before I continue, let me go ahead and say this. So the guy Bartolomeo, that's where I was at. Okay, that dude. They say that in his book that he wrote, that I just entitled, which is Historias de la Indias. Okay, he was one of the people that was given governorship somewhere in Mexico called Chiapas, right? During this time. And he also wrote against the bad treatment against the Indians, basically. He was supposedly for slavery when slavery started. And then somehow he changed his mind or whatever and started writing against it. But anyway, he was one of those people that took they call it an abstraction, or basically a quote from some of Christopher Columbus's words in his diaries. And he claimed that Christopher Columbus' third journey was to also see if the claims of John II, who was the king of Portugal at the time, the claims that somehow at these new lands, on one of these islands, they found canoes that were of the Malian makeup. You know, or like constructed like canoes that you'll find from the Malians. Even though at the time their capital was in Guinea. Yeah, Guinea. I like to say Guinea because it's how it's spelled, but it's Guinea in West Africa. A place called Niani. That was their capital, right? So these canoes are somehow found here, or within the Caribbean islands. I read the book. I'm going through the translation. And it is a section that it's a section that in the book, I think it's from chapters 127 to 139, because I read them all. I got them in my notes section on Facebook, where this is supposedly mentioned that, but it wasn't. You know, like it's a bunch of islands west of West Africa. It's called Cape Verde. During this whole journey of Bartolomeo, Christopher. Oh man, I'm messing it up basically. During that whole little journey, they stopped at Cape Verde. But within that passage itself, they didn't say nothing about no canoes being of Malian makeup. That's where this whole little trip, the third journey, is mentioned that. And remember what I said, dude claimed that the third voyage of Christopher Columbus, his whole the purpose for that third journey back this way was to also validate that claim. But it was nothing mentioned in the book about that claim being true. So the scholars, whoever put their little thoughts together, and they was like, well, you know, this is proof that the Malians, you know what I'm saying, came here before Christopher Columbus. That's false. Because in that book itself, which is one of their major sources, there's no mention in there. Now, it is another part where they mention, I forget, it's like at the beginning of it. I think it's before the preliminary, not preliminary, but it's before the introduction, the start of the book, where Guinea or Guinea was mentioned. But because it's translated, some of the language is off. They didn't say exactly. Okay, I'm basically going to break it down the way I read it in my mind. When they mentioned Guinea, they was talking about supposedly they was going to bring a lot of commodities, goods, and resources this way to the Caribbeans to try to show gratitude, basically. And then Guinea was mentioned in a portion of it, like within the inner quote. But it was in the form of a comparison. As far as like, we gonna bring this many goods, we gonna be this grateful. We're gonna be this grateful to the Caribbeans or on whichever one of these islands, as good as Goonie or Guinea or something like that. I gotta look at it again, but basically it was no real definite reference to the Malians whatsoever, because they had a company at the time. You know the Elmina Castle in Ghana, the Elmina Castle. Okay, that was constructed in 1482, right? It was a company at the time that the Portuguese also had going called it was a Company of Guinea or something like that, but it was in Spanish or Portuguese, and it's Casa of Guinea or Guinea Casa or Guinea of Casa or something like that. Basically, within that company, that's what the Elmina Castle was a part of. It was where they could take gold to, so that way they could take it from Africa in an easier way, rather than going as far as the Niger River or going up the Volta River. So it was built in Ghana for that reason, as far as that castle. But at the same time, it was connected within an organization called something of Guinea. You know what I'm saying? I'm messing up the name, Casa of Guinea or something like that. And it lasted from 1482, because it was connected to the building of that castle, all the way up until like 1482 to 1502, I think. If not 1513, I think 1502. Then the name was changed or whatnot. So within that paragraph in the book where they mention Goonie, because it's called company of or friend of or something like that, I think that was more so connected to the organization that they had going. But it was supposed to be a comparison, basically saying we're going to show this much gratitude. You get what I'm saying? But not saying to the Malian Empire that existed at the time. Even though the Malian Empire was a part of Guinea. You get what I'm saying? The area that they call Niani, the city Niani, is within the area that the gold field was a part of. The Bur field or the Burri gold fields is B-U-R-E fields, but gold fields. The land area that their capital was at was a part of where the gold was also dug up at, even though they had like 4 places. You know what I'm saying? So I don't see I haven't seen no evidence in this book. So I think those scholars are wrong. But it is another source that they base it on. And of course they talking about like the Olmec heads and all that. I don't doubt that. I don't think they were the Malians. That's all I'm saying. That's what I think. I ain't do my blog on it yet. But the Senegalese people got an interesting history too that predates Ghana as well. I'm talking about the ancient Ghanaians. Their history go back about, I think, 8,000 years. There's a set of rocks that look like that. It's a set of rocks. They're situated the same way that the rocks in England are situated. Stonehenge, those stones actually, not rocks. But the way that they got them positioned on the ground, it looks just like that. But it also looked like Napta Playa in Egypt, which also is around that period too. But I think theirs is 1,000 years. I ain't even paying attention, but I think theirs is 1,000 years early in 5,000 BC, or it's supposed to be carbon dated around that time. And these are real far locations. You know what I'm saying? Within Africa. You talk about Napta all the way in Egypt, by the Nile River. Then you talking about going on the opposite side to West Africa in Senegal. And you talking about this set of rocks. That's that old too. Things like that obviously deteriorate, but it's a sign of something going on that's significant to have a religion, because I think that is reflective of a tradition of a sort. I'm talking about like the way the rocks or the stones on the ground are situated. That's reflective of a tradition. That's too coincidental because it's a pattern. You know what I'm saying? But that pattern could be found on another continent somewhere. Well, not really a continent, but on the group of the British Isles, England. You know what I'm saying? You can find it there, but you can also find it in Egypt. That's fascinating. So,
also to add on with that, also the pyramids too. You can find that everywhere else.
I didn't hear what you say.
Also the pyramids.
Oh yeah, that's cool. But see, that's almost common knowledge. I'm talking about, man, it's way more wonders of the world than that. I can keep going. But I'm just saying that to say I'm not taking away from the Malians. I'm just being truthful with it. That's not how that happened. Absolutely not. Mansa Musa, rich, but Mansa Wali, Sundiata Keita's son, he reigned for like 4 years. And he was the first person that made a pilgrimage to Mecca as well. I'm checking that out. I'm like, okay, let me see if it's a record of it. I don't doubt it's true, but I got to point out the fact that a record of it does not exist. In Mecca at the time, where people would be making these pilgrimages, they had like overheads, kind of like emirs, people that they call sharifs. And then I found out that that's where the word sheriff come from too, because you can translate it and it's spelled exactly like that, like a sheriff, but it's called sharifs. Now, they had 2 at the time. Let me make sure that I'm correct with the date. Yeah, 2 at the time that Mansa Wali would have made his journey or pilgrimage. One, his name is Idris ibn Qatida. The other guy, his name is Abu Nume. They both became joint chiefs around 1250, all the way up to 301. During their time period, it was a lot of fighting going on too, especially against people that lived in Medina as well. So I'm reading their story and their biography and then the history of them. I'm reading everything carefully. It was no record of a pilgrimage of a Malian king such as Mansa Wali going there. But because they had internal fighting and strife, I could understand that. The next guy after that was Mansa Wadi. Okay. Oh, I messed it up. Yeah, he was the one, Mansa Wadi. He was the one that reigned from 1270 to 1274. Wali reigned from 1255 to 1270. 15 years. My bad. But yeah, it's still no record of that. You know what I'm saying? Because the other 2 dudes, as far as like the Sharifs in Mecca, still were the Sharifs at that time. Okay, then you got Mansa Wadi. That's when they had like a civil war. Because Khalifa wanted the throne too. Now, in the KanKan, as I was saying, they got this rule where like the next in line would get the heir to the throne. When Wali died, those 2 dudes, YT and Khalifa, Sundiata Keita had adopted them. You know what I'm saying, when they were young. But considered them his sons as well. That's the reason why when Wali died, who was the only son Sundiata Keita had, it created this civil war within the Malian Empire as well. Wadi gets the throne. It was a little strife with Wadi and Sundiata Keita's brother, Abu Bakari, because Abu Bakari is a part of the bloodline, even more so than his 2 adopted sons. But the way I look at it, being that they had that constitution at the time with all them rules, I think like 55 in total, something. Anyway, well, all of those rules, one of the rules is the heir would get the throne. Being that those 2 are his sons, and he accepted them as such, that means that will fall on either one of them. But the opposite argument comes in with his brother, like, okay, but I'm actually his brother in blood as well. But see, they got this constitution that they got to follow. So you got different ways of looking at it. That's what caused a little civil war. That's what I think added to the civil war. He gets the throne. He had gang Gayo. Now you know how you got Timbuktu, and then you got Gayo and Mali. They both along the Niger River. They call it the Rift. It's like, little curve upward or whatever. but Timbuktu is west of Gaya. They almost align in latitude, it looked like, but it's basically west of it. So they conquer as far as Gayo and annex them during Wadi's reign as the Mansa. So that's still 1270 to 1274. But because they had this civil war going on, this is my opinion. The actual fact, as far as like what's mentioned, what I read about them, is that they seem to kind of decline during that period at the same time. I'm still talking about Wadi, 1270, 1274. But he still gained Gayo. I think the decline was due to that civil war. That's my opinion on that. But Wadi ended up dying anyway in 1274. That's when his brother Khalifa came into power. So you still got Abu Bakr pushed to the side. Again, he's directly related to Sundiata Keita. So again, that's the contention part. Like, okay, I'm his blood heir. Yes, but those are his sons. And both of them are competing still as well. So anyway, after Wali died, somehow I guess Khalifa had enough influence and power, and obviously there probably was some inter-clan fighting. I'm talking about physical combat. But he ended up becoming the next Mansa. Only for a year, though, because this is what they say. He was the worst Mansa in Malian history. And because of him, they ended up losing that city, Gaya. So you got this internal strife. You got the economy at risk. And you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the whole entire, what they call it, the Gabara, the assembly that represent all 32 clans that existed at the time. So you got all of this at risk. They lose Gaya. And they claim he was a tyrant. Now, this is the weird part. This is the other fact they mentioned. The inner assembly, the aristocracy, you know what I'm saying? The Senate, basically, the representative of all of these various clans, they all voted to have dude killed. Now, I'm thinking like, okay, the Kubru Khan Fuga, the Constitution, is still new by that time period. What, 1275, that's what? About 40 years after Sundiata Keita, they still adhering to that. One proof again, the inner turmoil that's going on as well, even before that. So within this Kubru Khan Fuga, there's a rule that says if you deprive any person that deprives people of life is guilty and gets a death penalty for that. The way that they describe that king or that master, Khalifa, I'm like, if they voted to have dude assassinated or killed and they say he was assassinated, that's proof right there. They going by their constitution. They made that decision based on the constitution. So he probably was a tyrant and messing up the economy at the same time with whatever decisions that he was made. Because if you think about it, if you think about it, if they voted to have dude assassinated and he was a tyrant, that means he was a narcissist of such. You know, he liked power and abused it. You think he gonna stand there and be like, okay, y'all voted to have me killed. Okay, I'm gonna stand here and get killed. Like that movie Blow. You know what I'm saying? When dude met Pablo Escobar and he witnessed that guy get his head shot off, but the way he just stood there like a military soldier, I doubt if he take that position that he do the same thing. So they voted in shadow to have dude killed. That means they based that death and said, okay, it's warranted because he's violating this. He's depriving people of their justice of life. You know what I'm saying? So, hell yeah, that's what I think. That's my personal theory. I think they, excuse my language, I'm cursing, but I think they based that on that. So dude ended up getting killed. That's when his brother finally became Mansa, Abu Bakr. Now they say under him, everything seemed to be, you know what I'm saying, getting better or whatever. As far as they said the economy, I think some military moves were made as well. So he had a nice little 10-year period. Exactly what they said was like, okay, after 5 years of turmoil, basically. So they're saying going back all the way to 1270. starting with Wally because they starting with YT because of the that little inner conflict as far as like who really is the rightful heirs. So yeah, they say they was on the upcline or whatnot, and 1285. I mean, yeah, 1285. That's when he died, and then another guy named Sakura took the throne, but he took it through force. Now, see, he was another dude or person that was adopted because he was a slave at first. Sundiata Keita brought his freedom, and he became a military general. You know what I'm saying? Under the Malians, within the Mali Empire. But when Abu Bakr died, that's when he took the throne through a fight or whatnot. Reigned for about 15 years. Not too much is said of him except this that I thought was interesting. He also made a pilgrimage to Mecca. But again, those two sharifs that I mentioned, Idris ibn Qatida and what's the other guy name? Abu Numair, they were both the sharifs. Their job was to also look after people or oversee people that come there to make the Hajj. You know what I mean? To the Kaaba. Again, no record of him either. But, you know what I'm saying, I believe more than likely he probably did make the pilgrimage or whatnot. I mean, there's plenty of ways to look at that, but I think for sure, yeah, he more than likely made the pilgrimage. No record of that as well, but 15 years, he did all right. He made some military conquest, they say. Now, up until this point, I knew for sure, of course, they had the Buri fields. Remember, I was saying, like, it's like 4 of them. So I'm like, okay, I know they had the Bur fields or the Buri fields, and then the Wangara gold fields as well, which was actually in, I think Guinea. I think it was in Guinea. But they had those gold fields. The 2 other ones, the one in Burkina Faso, and then the Akan fields in Ghana. I wasn't sure about those 2, but I'm like, okay, if he made these military conquests, they definitely had control over those gold fields as well. So they had control of the lobby gold fields in Burkina Faso as well. So that's 4 altogether. Now this is my thing. I'm like, okay, as far as like Mansa Musa, the dude that I mentioned earlier, Mukdi Kati, the book that he wrote came out in the 16th century, I believe. But it's called Chronicle of the Seeker. So I read the whole little passage from him, right? He said during Mansa Musa's reign as emperor that their rule stretched as far as Niani, all the way through Timbuktu, Gayo, all that vast land area. Obviously, that's past Mauritania as well. Southeastern Mauritania, Adagas, it's past that, all the way to Niger. Another place called Singari Dugu, or Sigi Re, or CD Re, Dugu, or something like that. But Dugu, but that's in Niger. So you going all the way from Guinea, basically going to, not literally the coast, but because Niani, that's what. Eastern Guinea. So you basically going from Eastern Guinea as far as Niger. That's past Mauritania. That's past Mali. You know what I'm saying? You got nice little mileage there. To be in control of parts of places within a vast stretch like that is remarkable. You know what I'm saying? As far as Niger. So dude claimed that Mansa Musa had that far of a reach. So I'm saying if he did, more than likely they had control over all 4 gold fields at that time. That's why he was able to bring so much gold when he made his pilgrimage. But as far as him, the reason he made his pilgrimage was interesting. They said he accidentally killed his mother, of course. But, he went to like a priest. And the priest told him if you want to make amends for it, he got to spend his whole life basically beyond being in complete gratitude or showing gratitude because he got to give away gifts and all this type of stuff. But he got to make a pilgrimage at the same time. And for him to do it on the 12th date of the month that falls on a Saturday. But it took like 8 or 9 months. But that was the reason he made his pilgrimage, to make amends for accidentally killing his mother. They didn't say exactly how he did it. But he had his wife with him. He had a wife named Inari Kante. You know what I'm saying? She made a pilgrimage with him. She had about 800 women. You know what I'm saying? 800. Yeah, about 800. She had a nice amount of women that she took with her. Helpers and slaves and slaves and frames. But they said helpers. That's more than like slaves, concubines of the sort. You know what I'm saying? Them, and then some of her peers or whatnot. They made the trip on the way, brought all kind of gold camels, passed them out, supposedly built like 5 of the mosques. Because you know about the, if you don't know about it, it's called the Saint Corey. That was the first mosque that they built, major mosque at least. They built it a year later in 325. The pilgrimage was made in 324. But there was a guy named Al-Sahali that built that mosque for them. He was another person, aside from the historian who documented this, he was another person that met some Musa during his journey. So that's why I think also them pilgrimages are more than likely true. It's just that later on you get actual documentation of it. But he was saying that he made that pilgrimage and he spoke to him about this, and this is what he was saying. He did it because he accidentally killed his mother. But this is the thing. Further they go along, and the guy claimed that he wanted to bring back some sharifs. He met a lot of people there in Mecca, and he wanted to bring back people that like were within the Quraysh tribe or of that lineage. You know what I'm saying? Because the Quraysh tribe is where Muhammad come from. So he wanted to meet somebody like that. He offered to pay each person 1,000 mithils of gold. No, 4 persons. Yeah, 4 persons, 1,000 each. They all finally went with him. As they go along, as far as what I'm reading, what this guy, Mukdi Kati, said, they finally agreed to come to Mali. It was a little disagreement at first among certain people. They was like, nah, because Mansa Musa wanted them to bless the land with their presence. Basically honor them, and it'd be an honor for him if they chose to go to Mali. It's almost like a recognition of another, you know what I'm saying, empire or entity at the same time. Some people disagreed with it. They didn't think it was necessary, and some others say like, okay, they fear for the lives of these, they didn't say sharifs yet, but these people from Mecca of the Quraysh tribe going as far as to West Africa. You know what I'm saying, there to Niamey and Guinea. Eventually these people went. It got attacked, I think, in Mopti. You know what I'm saying? Close to the Niger, not the Niger, yeah, close to the Niger River as well. I think it's before Timbuktu though. But pretty close to it, not like literally along it, within range of it, but close to it enough. That's where they got attacked at. Now this is the thing, I'm like, okay, let me check the documentation for this. Because at that point, they referred to them as sharifs. You know, toward the part when they say they got attacked, they call them sharifs. I'm like, okay, I double checked, they did call them sharifs. So who would be the sharifs? I'm looking, and it was a son of Abu Numair. His name was Ramatha ibn Abi Numair. And then another guy named Numaida, because he had 3 other brothers all together that wanted to be the sharifs. So then the 3rd brother, his name was Abu Gaith, and then the 4th guy, his name was Ufayta. Now they became basically the sharifs, mainly the first 2. I mean the first guy, and yeah, the first guy basically. Rumaytha ibn Abi Numair, you know what I'm saying? And his other brother, Numaida. they were basically the two Sharifs the majority of the time, but you had a lot of fighting going on to where they were switching back and forth. And then like the Sultan, this guy named the Sultan of the Mamluks in Egypt, because they got like a whole complicated history too. But as far as the Sultan of that dude, he came, took shit over. Excuse my language. He took stuff over. And he had both of those brothers put in jail for a certain period, all the way up to, 1311? Yeah, 1311. I don't want to go through the whole history. But by the time we get to 1324, no, there's no record within that history in Mecca of those Sharifs at the time. There's no record of either one of them coming to Niani, you know what I'm saying, the capital city, or within Malian territory whatsoever, to Timbuktu. There's no record of it, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, that part I question. The pilgrimage probably was made, but I think the decision was not made for them to go with them, even though it's mentioned in Malian history. So, I thought that was interesting too, because I wanted to know. I'm like, if they say these were Sharifs, then let me go look at the list. You know what I'm saying? Let me look at some of the names. I'm looking at some of the names. I'm reading their history. I'm like, nah. Because by the time you get to 1324, I'm going to say it, the guy, roommate Thai, Ibn Abi Numay, him and his brother Abu Gaish were the two Sharifs at the time. During that exact year, 324, because they became that in 320. So I know, and then nothing happened during that period until after 1324. Until after 1324. So I know for sure, nah. That's more than likely not true. That's why I stopped that on purpose. But yeah, I think everything else is true. He definitely made that pilgrimage. He definitely was there. You know what I'm saying? You can't deny that based on the facts of it. Because it's also correlated by other people who are not from Mali. So why would they be lying? And then it's backed up later on by old guy, for example, Mugdi Kati. So hell yeah. I keep forgetting Mama here. I'm going in my, you know what I'm saying?
Mama,